active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the fairgrounds.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 1692 means we got shots fired. 4:15 ASL. Route 291 sounded like an automatic firearm.
Thank you for listening.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter
mass casualty incidents.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
Let's get right to the breaking news. The shooting at the mall in Washington State.
This is the man police are hunting for this morning. They say he walked into the mall and opened fire, killing 5 people in the makeup department at Macy's.
The Cascade Mall is just outside of Seattle. It's transformed into the scene of a mass shooting. Customers, many of them shell-shocked, were loaded onto buses and then taken to a safe location until their friends and their family could pick them up.
Nobody wants to go to the mall to die. It's the one public place where people of every ethnicity, age group, social circle, and religion come together. Whether it be shopping, socializing, or strolling around, everybody is there because they chose to be there. The smell of warm pretzels and icing, samples of teriyaki chicken, children running through waves of people, lights changing from store to store. The all-favorite person asking you to sample their skin lotion and the avoidance that ensues. Going to the mall isn't like going to the grocery store. It's not simply another shopping trip. It's an experience. For Sarai Lara, Chuck Egan, Belinda Galda, Beatrice Dodson, and Shayla Martin, going to the mall on September 23, 2016 was an experience they would never live to tell. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the no notoriety pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym, and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge in not naming the shooter by their actual name. In today's episode, we will be referring to the shooter as Kevin. Around 5:45 p.m., Kevin walked into the movie theater located inside the Cascade Mall and bought a movie ticket. Prior to the movie starting, he walked into the theater where the movie would be playing and propped the theater's exit door open with his iPhone. Kevin then left the theater. Another customer, Jacob Dodds, had entered the theater excited to watch the movie. Jacob noted that the exit door of the theater was slightly ajar, and since he had been a prior theater employee, he knew that this was out of the ordinary. Jacob took the iPhone, which now had a cracked screen, out of the door and turned it into the front desk. Kevin walked back into the theater and noticed his phone was gone. He began to panic as his plan was now tarnished and not going as he wanted it to. Kevin walked to the front desk and asked if a phone had been turned into lost and found. After retrieving his phone, he went outside to his car, a 2005 blue Chevrolet Cavalier, and took a Ruger .22 caliber rifle out of the trunk of his car. He spent a total of about 10 minutes outside before he re-entered the mall, this time through the Chuck E. Cheese, and headed straight for the Macy's department store.
The suspect entered the mall without a weapon. About 10 minutes later, entered Macy's with a rifle, fired multiple times, struck 4 females ranging in age from a teenager to seniors. Also, a male was struck.
Almost immediately, he opened fire. He first shot and killed a 16-year-old female named Sarai Lara, who had been standing by a clothing rack looking at clothes.
I heard about 1, and then 2, and then that's when I turned around, and then that's when round started going 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it wasn't all at once. It was more like a shot, and then 2 seconds later another shot. So crazy, crazy.
Kevin then walked towards the cosmetic counter, shooting Chuck Egan, who stood in his path. After killing Sarai and Chuck, Kevin walked up to the cosmetics counter and opened fire yet again. At the cosmetics counter, he killed Belinda Galda, her mother Beatrice Dotson, and Shayla Martin.
I found 2 ladies that were on the floor. One was face down, a lot of blood, pool of blood on the ground, and then there was another lady right next to her. I checked for her pulse. She didn't have any.
Chuck Egan didn't die right away. He had been airlifted to the Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, Washington, and passed away the day after the shooting. The 4 women were killed instantly. Complete chaos overtook them all. Employees and customers were running for their lives. Some hid in bathrooms and clothing racks, while others hid in store break rooms.
To see it happen 20 feet away from you is just, it's insane to me. It's crazy. And I never thought that I would be in that position to be staring at somebody who is losing their life, and I can't do anything about it.
At the women's Macy's, 4 possible shots fired, unknown number of victims, law enforcement being advised.
Cascade, all Burlington units. Male ran into the women's Macy with a long rifle. We're getting multiple calls. Forces 3 to 4 down inside. So I got 1 rifle left in this area empty. I've got 2 victims down bleeding in the makeup section. Employee calling and advising they are hiding in the break room at this time.
After Kevin shot the 5 victims, he noticed he ran out of ammunition. Instead of reloading his rifle, he calmly put the firearm on the cosmetics counter and simply walked away, as if nothing had happened. He then went out to the parking lot and drove away from the mall in a Chevy Cavalier. Kevin began driving to Seattle, an hour away. He stopped, had a salmon dinner, and proceeded to sleep in his car for the night. The next morning, when he awoke, he read the news. His face was plastered on all the major news networks. He decided to drive back to Oak Harbor. Little did Kevin know that there were multiple police agencies that had banded together to look for him. The FBI, ATF, Burlington Police, and Washington State Police joined forces to create a large search party. The manhunt was on. All 5 victims that lost their lives at the hands of Kevin that day were shot at close range. There was also 1 person injured with non-life-threatening injuries. The youngest of the victims, Sarai Lara, was 16 years old and a sophomore at Mount Vernon High School. Her parents, Eva and Salvador Lara, were so proud of Sarai as she was very sweet, loving, and caring. She was described as being the perfect child and as her mom's right hand at home. She was always helping out around the house, helping to take care of her siblings and baby nephew. When Sarai was just 8 years old, she was diagnosed with cancer and would later overcome the cancer and live cancer-free. In fact, just a week prior to the shooting, her mom had taken her to the doctor for a checkup, and it was confirmed she was still cancer-free. Sarai was also very proud of her Mexican heritage. She enjoyed hanging out with her friends, texting, and shopping. Sarai had been at the mall with her mom and 5-year-old little sister on the day of the shooting. The trio was at the playground inside the mall when Sarai decided to go to Macy's to browse the clothing racks. After the massacre, her classmates made a memorial for her with flowers, stuffed animals, and many classmates wore pink and purple in her honor. Her 19-year-old brother also created a GoFundMe page to try and raise money in an effort to help offset some of the funeral costs for his little sister. The only male victim that was killed was 61-year-old Chuck Egan. He had worked as a maintenance worker at the Boeing Plane Company from 1973 until the day his life was taken. Chuck's given name was Wilton. However, everyone had only known him as Chuck. He was born on June 27, 1955 in Unity, Oregon. And when he was 8 years old, he and his 10-year-old brother went and lived with their grandparents, who later moved to Lake Stevens, Washington. Chuck was a 1973 graduate of Kent Meridian High School. He adored his wife Pamela, and together they had 2 daughters, and Chuck had 2 stepsons from Pamela's prior marriage. On the day of the shooting, Chuck and Pamela had been on a dinner date when they decided to stop at Macy's and do some shopping after they had eaten. When the shooting started, Chuck took Pamela's hand and the couple started running. Pamela had tripped, fell, and when Chuck turned back to help his wife, he was shot. Chuck would die trying to help his wife. 64-year-old Belinda Galda was at Macy's with her 95-year-old mother, Beatrice Dotson. Belinda had been a probation officer for Snohomish County District Court for 27 years. She was highly respected in her field, and it was reported she was a positive influence for many of her clients. Belinda was born on November 8, 1951, in Everett, Washington. She and her husband, Mark, had been married for over 43 years and had 2 beautiful daughters. Mark and Belinda also had 5 grandchildren they constantly doted on and spoiled. Belinda will be remembered for her love and kindness, amazing hugs, and contagious laugh. Beatrice Dotson was 95 years young and lived life to the fullest without ever taking one of those 95 years for granted. Beatrice preferred to go by the nickname B. B was born in Cove Creek, North Carolina on August 20th, 1921. While she grew up in North Carolina, she went to business school and became an accountant. After she wed Rogers Wilson, the duo moved west, where they had 5 children together. In addition to her 5 children, she also had 4 grandchildren, 11 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-grandchild. B was a true Southern belle. Shayla Martin was born on November 26, 1963 in Peoria, Illinois. She was 52 years old when her life was tragically taken. Shortly after her birth, her parents, Roland and Judith Martin, decided to move west. In 1971, they moved to Mount Vernon and bought a business called Pizza Pete. Shayla worked there with her parents and sisters. She graduated from Mount Vernon High School in 1981. Shayla was a makeup artist for Macy's and had worked at the Estee Lauder counter at Macy's for 25 years. She truly enjoyed her work, making people feel beautiful inside and out. On February 14, 1994, Shayla adopted her daughter and helped raise her 2 stepchildren. She had many different interests, including going to garage sales, thrift store shopping, rock collecting, cooking, gardening, reading, and especially cheering for the Seattle Seahawks. After Kevin woke up the next morning and had seen his face on all the news stations, he decided to drive back to Oak Harbor. Meanwhile, the police had learned about a local gym in Oak Harbor that was a frequent haunt of the shooter. They decided to pay the gym a visit so they could get someone to identify the shooter. Upon arriving at the gym and speaking with some of the employees, the police were able to verify that this person they were looking for was indeed Kevin. The day after the shooting, September 24th, an officer observed Kevin walking on the sidewalk 30 miles away from the mall in Oak Harbor. The day after the shooting, September 24th, an officer observed Kevin walking on the sidewalk 30 miles away from the mall in Oak Harbor. The officer ordered Kevin to stop walking and put his hands up. Kevin followed the officer's orders and did as he was told.
We feel confident that we have the shooter. Whether or not anyone else was involved, that's what we'll be determining.
The officer later reported that Kevin was in a zombie-like state when he was arrested, never saying a word to the officer. Between 6:30 and 7 o'clock p.m., investigators were able to confirm the manhunt over. They had captured the shooter.
I did an abrupt U-turn, hit my lights, pulled my gun, and took the individual into custody. And then we both jumped out with our guns, and he just froze, and we directed him not to, and he complied. He said nothing. He was just kind of zombie-like.
We'll be right back after these short messages. Burlington, Washington is a rather small town with an estimated 9,000 people. It is located an hour and 20 minutes north of Seattle and sits halfway between Seattle and Vancouver. The total land area is 4.44 square miles. The Cascade Mall opened in the fall of 1989 and is about 585,000 square feet. The featured stores are JCPenney, TJ Maxx, and Macy's. There are also an abundance of other stores and restaurants. The mall is owned and managed by Merlone Geyer. The town where Kevin lived, Oak Harbor, is 30 miles from Burlington and has a population of about 22,000 people. The town is located on Whidbey Island and is home to many military families due to the nearby Naval Air Station. A few hours before the shooting began, between 5 and 5:30 p.m., Kevin entered a gun shop with hopes of buying a handgun. The owner was present in the shop when Kevin